The UN Security Council is holding an emergency meeting at the request of the United Arab Emirates to discuss Israel's attack on Gaza. The UAE is one of 10 elected council members working on a new Security Council resolution on the Israel-Hamas war, which is still in discussion. Now, the council has rejected 4 draft resolutions, 1 vetoed by the United States, 1 vetoed by Russia and China, and 2 that failed to get the minimum 9 yes votes. Diplomatic efforts continue as Israel moves more troops and tanks into Gaza. Now, to chat about the war in more detail is Lisa Daftari with the Foreign Desk. She joins us once again from Los Angeles. Lisa, is there any way to potentially stop the ground attack by Israel, which wants to wipe out Hamas?
Well, there's a few ways of looking at this. Let's put it all into perspective. The goal of Israel from the get-go in declaring war against Hamas was, of course, in retaliation for the October 7th massacre of Israel. And their goal, as they had put it, was to wipe out Hamas. It was not to decimate Gaza or to kill civilians or to go after homes or churches or mosques or hospitals or anything like that. So that narrative is being completely changed by a lot of different media outlets and a lot of influencers online. Hal, it's horrific to think that people are getting their actual news the same place they get their makeup advice or their real estate advice on social media platforms with people that have 4 or 5 million followers and are dispelling, or I should say, first putting out a lot of these different narratives and then, dispelling the truths that we try to put out in the news. It may be slowed down, and that is by pressure from the White House, first and foremost. Secondly, the goal of the Israelis is to get those hostages back. Everyone's forgetting about 229 innocent, many of them children, babies, toddlers, and many of them elderly. I spoke with a woman just this morning who has an 85-year-old uncle, and she lives here in Los Angeles, who is being held by Hamas in Gaza. So a lot to consider here. Israel's goal is not to wipe out or decimate anything. Their goal is to minimize or diminish the threat of a terrorist organization, Hamas, and also to get back the hostages.
Now, the U.S. government is privately urging Israel not to invade Gaza, but to pursue more of a, quote, surgical campaign. What would that actually look like, Lisa?
That's what it always looks like for Israel. And again, Israel's never started a war in its 75 years of history. It's never started a war. It's always had to finish wars because it is being attacked by its neighbors. Now, what would it look like? I mean, this is what Israel does. They do tactical, spot-on, strategic, pinpointed attacks. Now, what people don't realize, and they think this is made up, is that Gaza is governed by Hamas, a terror organization. So they strategically put their most sensitive assets, meaning weapons, launching offices, command centers, inside sensitive areas where it would be frowned upon to bombard or bomb or invade. So we're talking about churches, mosques, schools, hospitals. It just came out this week. We've been reporting this for a very long time at the Foreign Desk, but it just came out in the mainstream media. A lot of different publications, including the New York Times, covered this, that there is their biggest command center is underneath their main hospital in Gaza. This is what makes it so difficult. So to your question, they're always doing pinpointed, targeted attacks. But the Gazans, of course, Hamas, making it so much more difficult to get into where they need to go. And of course, to find those hostages.
Yeah, especially beneath a hospital. Wow. Lisa, the Biden administration is calling on China to use its influence with Iran to urge restraint and prevent the ongoing Israel-Hamas conflict from spreading.
It's comical, right? Look at us, the world power, the premier leader of the world in terms of foreign policy, at least it used to be, going to China, a rogue nation, and saying, please, pretty please, talk to the Iran regime to temper their reaction or their basically the way that they're handling the war between Gaza and Hamas. The reason for this, Hal, is a few things. First and foremost, is the White House is trying to distance itself from the narrative that the Iran regime is even involved. Why? Because the United States, under the Biden administration, has tried for almost 3 years to wine and dine the Iran regime, to empower them, to embolden them, gave them money, gave them a pass on sanctions that allowed them to earn 60 to 90 billion dollars in their own oil revenue, trading with none other than China. And of course, they're paying all the bills here of all these different terror proxies, including Hamas, Hezbollah, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, the Houthis in Yemen, and the list goes on. So now, basically, the United States is trying to work its back channels and going to China, a rogue nation, trying to say, listen, I know you guys have a newly developed relationship with Iran's regime. Can you guys walk them off the edge? And this is why we are where we are. This is entirely the head of the snake or the octopus. People are giving it different names. The source of the problem is Iran's regime, and of course, the White House complicit in empowering them, emboldening them for the last 3 years, giving them money and allowing them to continue on with their support of these terror proxies.
A group of leading House Republicans, Lisa, are concerned that millions of taxpayer dollars meant for foreign aid could actually be funneled to the terrorist group Hamas.
Of course it can. Of course it can, and it is, and it does. A few things here. The attack on Israel was not just Hamas. It was a handful of these terror proxies supported by Iran's regime that met with Iran's regime to get money, training, and to carry out this massacre. Now, we give money, the United States gives money to the Palestinian Authority. We give money through UNRWA, the United Nations. And of course, this money is being used in some ways, not on humanitarian aid, because as you can tell, everyone talks about how poor the Palestinian people are. Well, guess who's rich? The leaders of Hamas, the ones living in Qatar, the ones who are freely walking about. And no one talks about the money here. And it's absolutely true. When we give money, this is one of the reasons Donald Trump cut the aid to the Palestinians, not because he is heartless, as many would like to claim, but because he said this is ending up in terrorist hands. For one example, very quickly, Hal, they have a pay-to-slay program. You get paid when one of your family members kills himself in the line of duty, him or herself, I should say. So if you have somebody who's willing to go out there and kill, you get monthly checks. In this last massacre, some of the captured Hamas operatives told Israeli interrogators that they were promised $10,000 on an apartment if they would bring back hostages. I mean, this is what our taxpayer money is being spent on, and that's the absolute truth.
So what's the latest with the more than 200 hostages? There have been some recent reports that a few have been released by Hamas.
Right. So 2 American citizens, a mother and a daughter, were released and through the Red Cross. They are safe and sound. 2 elderly women whose spouses and family members are still being held hostage were also released. Now, how they were Israelis. This is very important because they were interviewed, I should say, and a lot of media outlets covered this as they were treated very nicely. They thought their captors were wonderful. Well, they have family that are still being held hostage. They have to speak nicely. They have to be obviously very careful so that they can get their loved ones out. And that's exactly what we're working with here. If they want to drip give out release 2 hostages a week, we're going to be here for a very long time, and Israel is going to continue. But it's very, very ironic where the world community is asking for a ceasefire, but nobody's asking for these hostages to be returned as a first point of reconciliation here. Those hostages have to come home. Those are innocent civilians, and again, many of them being children, mothers, elderly. That's what they were going for. One of the Hamas operatives told Israeli interrogators that we were told to kill the men and bring back the children and the mothers. It's horrific. They're barbaric monsters. There's no other way to say this. There is no bias in calling out Hamas. There is no bias in calling out these monsters and what they did. Just last night, the news broke that they put a baby in the oven and cooked the baby. I mean, you can't even, this is not even in the movies. It's so horrific what they have done, beheadings and all sorts of things to innocent people. So again, first and foremost, those hostages need to come home.
I'm hearing reports of that, but is there any actual proof? Like a baby in an oven and the beheadings? Is there proof of that though?
Yes, there is. This I actually heard from the United Hatzalah, is a volunteer ambulance paramedic group in Israel. And I actually spoke to Ali Bir, who's the head of that, last night, and he confirmed that he has seen the videos. He walked through many of these sites. He was there when they uncovered this. He will never be the same again.
Wow.
Yeah, he had to actually walk through, and when they discovered this, again, it's very difficult what they're trying to do. And there's so many bodies that have not yet been identified because they have been burned so badly. They don't even have any DNA to scrape and to test in order to see who these people are. Last night also, we found out that two of the young women that were at that festival, that concert, both of them, I believe, under 22 years old, one of them being a German national, one was beheaded and the other one was also killed. We believe that they were hostages, but now we are told that they were both killed by the hands of Hamas.
Lisa, we're seeing anti-Semitism on the rise all over the world, more and more rallies in support of Hamas. There was even a report coming out of Russia that a large mob allegedly stormed an airport yelling Allahu Akbar while hunting for Jews after a flight arrived from Tel Aviv?
Yeah, they heard, and I've seen the video. It's all over social media. So if anybody wants the receipts on any of this, go ahead, feel free. If you want to see the receipts on the dead babies and the things like that, those are also available. I mean, your soul will never be the same again, but they are available. This video out of Russia is so scary. How they basically flood the airport. You could see them. They're just coming from all over. And once they find out that this flight landed from Israel, they rushed the escalators to go up, and they were looking to lynch Israelis. I mean, there's so much to unpack here. What does this have to do with policy or land or any? It doesn't. It's pure anti-Semitism. And now the situation in Israel, again, Hamas attacking Israel, has given people some sort of justification to just come out onto the streets of whether it's LA or New York or Russia or Germany or Rome, and to say that Jews should die. That's exactly what they're saying. Wherever in the world you are, if you have Jewish blood, you should be exterminated. That's what they're saying. And it's up to our neighbors to wake up and say this is wrong. I mean, this would not be accepted against any other religion or race. This would not be accepted. And I mean, it's 2023. There's so many times a day when I'm covering this, and I'm like, is this real? Could this truly be that we have colleges in the United States where children are hiding? The students are actually hiding because of the threats, and the school security does not believe that they can protect them. It's horrific, horrific.
Lisa, campus police at Cornell University are investigating after horrendous anti-Semitic threats were made toward a kosher dining hall. There were even apparently people advocating for the raping and killing of all Jewish women.
Again, it's mind-boggling that this is 2023 and Americans on American campuses. And these are schools, Hal, where they have a large Jewish student body. They feel very comfortable. They have an active social life on campus. We saw this at UPenn. We saw this at Cooper Union, where the kids were hiding in the library because, again, campus police didn't believe that they could keep them safe. And guess what? The librarians offered them to hide in the attic in 2023 in New York City. And now Cornell is the third one this week where there were actual threats. And again, I posted some of these on my Instagram where you can see the threats coming into the school. There's a chat, and you can see they're saying, if you find one, kill one, slit their throat. I mean, why can't the campuses, why can't they start cracking down on them and expel these students? There have to be consequences. I mean, I know third parties are doing that. They're doxing these students. They're going around. I know there's a group at Harvard University, for example, going around with trucks with the names of the students on the trucks. There are others who are alums of these schools and saying, we will never give one of these students a job. We will keep a list and we will blacklist them. We will never give them. There have to be consequences to this kind of bigotry and hatred. It is disgusting. I mean, how would you trust to be on the same campus with somebody who's asking you to slit someone else's throat because of the religion they were born into? So yes, this is happening, and we're covering it. But again, it's not getting enough attention. It's truly horrific, and I think, and I say this many times a day, this war will eventually come to an end. And of course, there's always bloodshed on both sides, and we try to control that and we try to minimize that as best as possible. But I think one of the hardest aspects of this war is knowing that when this war is over, we will still go back to having these kinds of bigots living among us, this kind of hatred, this kind of anti-Semitism in all of our cities.
Lisa, the Biden administration has come under fire for allowing Iran's foreign minister to enter the United States. Hossein Amir Abdullahian was in New York for meetings at the United Nations.
Yeah, again, how did we get here, right? So the year 2023, we have a war. We have Iran's regime complicit in that war, but yet we keep giving them honors at the UN. We keep giving a podium at the UN. We keep giving them a voice. We keep giving them more power. And here you have, in the same week that this war is still going on, you have a representative from the Iran regime who is believed to be part of the planning of the Hamas massacre come to the UN and what? Threaten the United States. He basically said if this continues, this escalation continues, there will be consequences for the United States. I mean, again, U.S. taxpayer money to allow him to come to the United States, to be in a hotel in New York City, to have that kind of security.
Wow. She's our foreign affairs expert and host of the Foreign Desk, Lisa Daftari. Thanks again for joining us today from Los Angeles.
Thank you, Hal. Thank you for having me.